Welcome to Innovate or Evaporate, the podcast where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Every episode, we dive deep into cutting-edge ideas, breakthrough technologies, and the fearless pioneers pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Today's guest is Tia White, a trailblazer in AI and machine learning. From teaching herself Python to leading transformational teams at companies like Capital One, Tia has proven that resilience and curiosity are the ultimate catalyst for innovation. In this episode, we'll explore how Tia broke barriers, built diverse teams, and navigated a rapidly evolving tech landscape to change the future of AI. If you're ready to be inspired and learn how to embrace innovation, stay tuned, because it's Innovate or Evaporate.
Today we are joined on the show by Tia White. Tia is a leading AI and machine learning executive, having transformed her engineering career into a groundbreaking path. From self-taught Python skills to pioneering roles at Capital One, she's broken barriers and built diverse teams. Her journey exemplifies the power of determination and continuous learning. Let's get ready to be inspired, challenged, and equipped with new insights to navigate the future of innovation in an AI-driven world with Tia White. Welcome, Tia, to the show.
Thank you, Toph. I don't know if you may have added some stuff there in that intro for me, but I appreciate you having me.
It's absolutely an honor. And you just got off stage, the opening keynote of Rally this morning, and did an awesome keynote on AI Unleashed, redefining the future of innovation. And before we jump into AI and future of innovation, you brought up some things this morning I thought were really interesting. Let's just take a pause and let's go back in time. Let's go back in history and tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
I grew up in a very small town in North Carolina, rural, impoverished. Most of the working force, hourly or manual labor. There was an Air Force base there, so that also added to the economy, and what thrive it had, that contributed to it. But very still much in a former decades prior, they still have not caught up with the time. And I always used to call it, you have to break the chains to be able to leave. And if you get constrained in those chains, you're stuck there for your entire life.
Yep, that's amazing. So I grew up on a really tiny little farm, middle of nowhere, on a particle board floor. And sometimes I think that it's almost like growing up with struggle and like having to really put it out there. Sometimes you can just use that to your advantage almost, right?
I think it creates a sense of resilience if you fuel it the right way.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great point. So were you always a math genius in school growing up? Was it like a foregone conclusion that you're going to be a mathematician someday?
So I would say probably from my dad, yes. So my dad was gifted in math and science. And it's something he said he noticed in me early on. So I don't know if it was nurture or nature, if you will, maybe a little bit of both. But I was always gifted in math and science. And by my grammar errors, you can tell language arts and that stuff is not my forte.
So when you were in high school, when you would daydream about what your life would look like in the future, when you paint that picture for us, at that time in your life, what did you think that looked like?
I had no clue I would be in this profession. I originally wanted to go to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, major in mass communications, and be an anchor on ESPN. That was my dream. That was the plan. I ended up going to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, partially because my parents had a financial setback, and I got a ton of scholarships from there.
Yep.
You could also take your car your first year. My high school sweetheart was 30 minutes away, so I thought the convenience of that all to this man I was going to marry, which we didn't stay together, added to the motivation to go there. And upon entry, I happened to do my placement test.
Yep.
Math, reading, foreign language, Spanish, and the others were mediocre except math. And the advisor said, "Oh my God, you scored off the charts in math. Are you sure you want mass communications to be your major?"
Interesting.
And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, do some exploratory work, have some conversations." And originally I started out in computer science, but I hated the grind of the labs.
Yep.
And so then I went back to her after a few courses and I said, "Hey, there has to be a better way." And she introduced me to information systems engineering in the business school, which gave you a tech foundation, but also business acumen, and it was the best decision I made. I learned to code and write SQL queries and build databases and build websites in HTML and program in Java, but yet it wasn't only C# and just building these compiler type programs.
I think it's really interesting. I think about STEM, and so we have a big push, right, to introduce STEM, even as early as elementary school, which I think is wonderful. But I've been asking my son, he's 16 now, been asking my son and his friends since literally they were in kindergarten, like, what do you think about STEM? And it used to go, huh? And then, I think I've heard of that, right? And then it evolved into high school of that's only for the smart kids. I think like what you just mentioned is you can have different interests and not be an expert maybe in developing or code or some specific language, but still understand that a product has to be built. And there's different roles and skill sets needed to bring a product to life. Like, how do you think about that a little bit?
So I always approach any product, whether it's back office, front office, customer facing, as a human-centered approach.
Yep.
Like, we've heard of human-centered design, but I look at it more as an approach because it goes throughout the entire life cycle. So I think there's different roles that play a benefit, and I think in today's time, especially with the optimization, whether a startup or a large enterprise, the pressure companies are under, I think you have to wear multiple hats. And so you can't just be the world's best product person. Maybe you're the world's best products person, but you also have an affinity or appreciation towards design.
Yeah.
Maybe you're the world's best front-end engineer, but you have an appreciation towards product.
Yep.
But through it all, I think that you have to have a specialty that's human-focused and collaborate well with others to bring a product, a vision to life. That's how I like to think about it, and I think there's a place for everyone. I call it tech adjacent or engineering adjacent or hardcore engineering.
So when you you graduate from college, you enter the workforce. Walk us through the stepping stones of kind of like, so you graduate from college, your first foray into the professional quote unquote world after college. And like, give us a couple of stepping stones, and I want to kind of turn it into some of the examples you gave on stage today, but kind of connect those dots for us.
It's interesting. My plan was to only work in the professional world for 2 years. I wanted to go, so then I went away from mass communications. Then I said, I'm going to be a lawyer. So I wanted to
What kind of lawyer did you think?
Corporate or sports.
Yep.
Or sports, one of the two. And so I said, okay, I'll go to the workforce, save some money so I don't have to take out loans, and then go to law school. Yep. And I'll take the LSAT. And that just never happened because my professional career, Wells Fargo, it was like a whirlwind, but in a good way. I went in through a leadership development program. It was only 20 of us. You go through multiple rounds of interviews. Ironically, at the time, I don't know if she had technology and operations, Jean Davis. She was on the board at UNC Greensboro, my undergrad school, which is the only reason why they recruited from there, because she was on the board.
Interesting.
And so I went through these recruiting processes, landed there through this technical development program where it's supposed to fast track your career. You're given soft skills and hard skills. You're placed in a team, but you come back every 3 months to go through immense training, either technical or soft skills, and you have access to the most senior leaders in the company. And so I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with probably the fact that it was more instantaneous. I think in this generation, there's this instant gratification business.
Right, yes.
And it was instantaneous. So I started out as a back-end Java engineer for the online banking platform. And I had a fast ascend. I went from being an engineer to a tech lead where I was reviewing designs, to a team lead where I managed people. And then the CTO of the company took a liking to me. And then he needed someone to do some project management for this essential project to the company. And he hand-selected me because of my tech background. And so that was lesson number one for me, to be very honest. One, I let somebody chart my path instead of being focused on what meant the most for me.
Interesting.
Two, if you are in engineering or tech, your first 5 to 7 years are so fundamental. I should have stayed hands-on longer, and I didn't. And so I had to work really hard to earn the cred of those other people that are hardcore engineers, because I had to prove that I had it, because I only probably coded for 2.5 years out of college.
Yep.
And I had a fast ascent. I went on leading large teams or large strategic imperatives or initiatives for the company. Went to work finally at Wells Fargo for the corporate CIO and led like strategy, innovation, architecture, production support stuff for her, and had some phenomenal opportunities in 2 years, and fell in love with the public cloud. We had done a POC with Azure, and we weren't ready to move. We were risk adverse. And Capital One reached out and wanted me to do something AWS first. And I left. I went from leading large geographical teams, heavily influential, helping negotiate multi-million-dollar deals with companies like Oracle, to working for this smaller company, deep in the organization. No one knew me, leading like 14 people.
That's amazing. So how do you think about, so with the emergence of AI tools, and what do you think the future of developers look like? So if you think about data scientists and mathematicians, machine learning engineers, back end, front end, database, what of those do you think would be the first to be automated? And the quote you just put up from, that was somebody from Salesforce, right?
Sylvia, yeah.
And becomes your what do you call it, your superpower, your collaborative...
Your superpower collaborator.
Your superpower collaborator. So how do you think that first manifests itself and disrupts like developers?
So number one, it's already disrupting developers. I won't name tools or products, but there are a plethora of products out there that do everything from refactoring code, taking one language, converting it to another, and that used to like keep tons of engineers occupied for years if company was going away from mainframe to distributed systems and going away from one language to another. But now there's tools that do that. There are tools that optimize code, create efficiencies versus a human doing that. There are tools that finish lines of code. There are tools that design the pre-step before coding. There are tools that help automate testing now. Think about CI/CD intelligence is what I call it, or intelligent CI/CD. But I believe, and don't quote me on this on the number of years, but I know definitive without a doubt, developers that don't have AI skills will be obsolete in less than 10 years.
So I think that's spot on. And so back in the day, so when I first entered the workforce, I'm going to age myself here a little bit, but in the early days I was in construction development. And when I first graduated from college in '92, the big shift was, you had these folks that would do the designs and design moments, et cetera, with structural engineering and steel and how it connects. All those calculations were done by hand drawn. And then this thing called CAD came along, AutoCAD or CAD. And
computer automated design.
And the industry's like, this is ridiculous, this is going to run the industry, et cetera, et cetera. And there were some problems early on with the software. Like we were on the building side of hospitals and stadiums and things. And you would go to start building something, and it was like 3 feet apart. It didn't work. How do you think about? Do you think this is a great thing for development, or do you think it's not a good thing? How do you think about it?
I think it's a great thing for development, and I always think with the customer. And the customer could be a patient in the hospital. The customer could be a person walking into a financial center. The customer could be someone checking out at their favorite retailer online or brick and mortar. But it's great for the customer. I also think, I don't care what people say, the economy is still so very unstable. And companies, big, small, wide, large, are having to make tons of trade-offs. I think it preserves jobs, maybe not for all, but for the majority, because it allows them to be more efficient. It allows ideation, innovation, and delivery to go faster. And hopefully the efficiency ratios, the amount it takes to make whatever currency someone is in, continues to drive down so you can reinvest in the community or innovation or workforce of tomorrow. And so I think it's this great funnel or flywheel to continue doing business for good.
So how do we get those folks out there? And I'm talking, there's some CEOs of 500, 700, $1 billion companies that, and even, I guess I understand it more on the government side, the municipalities or states, they may be more resistant to some of this stuff. But some states aren't, right? They're embracing it. But there are still CEOs of companies out there, of major companies, that are kind of rejecting AI. And they're, and you talked a little bit about this on stage, that they're a little bit afraid of it. They think it's going to put, quote unquote, people out of work, and they're just resistant to the change. And these are well-established companies, and this is these conversations are literally happening every day today. You had some thoughts on that I think are interesting, right? If you don't embrace it, what happens? And talk about the customer. How do we get those people to see the light that this is something to embrace.
So this is what I will share with you over the past 18 months since ChatGPT launched.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those leaders that were apprehensive to AI, forget AI, a lot of those leaders that were apprehensive to the public cloud, because it's a necessity really to go fast, have now turned the tide where they are very much embracing it. And they're embracing it because they feel like they don't have a choice. Now, it may be a direct report to the CEO, but the CEO is telling him, her, they to do it. It may be the CEO and the board is telling them if they're, governed the right way, right? Whether public or private. And the government. Now, you're right. Some agencies don't do it. They don't have to do it. Their culture just doesn't embrace it, even though they should. But other agencies like the Department of Defense, they are accelerating some of these things. So I think the amount of people that are apprehensive to it has decreased drastically since the proliferation of generative AI because of OpenAI and ChatGPT. But to the original question you asked me, if people do not embrace it, they will be left behind. They will be displaced. And I am a firm believer to think that AI, it's almost like the ATM. When the ATM was launched, like I think in the 1960s, they thought that it was going to displace all tellers and people were apprehensive. When in actuality, it had a different effect. It allowed more money to be deposited, more cash flow and cash on hand for these banks, so they were able to open more financial centers. When that happened, the net increase in teller jobs drastically improved or increased over a 2-year period. Same thing with the automated scanner in grocery stores because productivity increases. So because of that, I think that it will not displace all jobs. Will some jobs be reduced? Yes. But what it will do is allow for, again, optimization, and those jobs will be, I'll say, supplemented with people that have AI skills, not an AI engineer or scientist, but people, again, adjacent or in that field that understand how to embrace it and leverage it for their job.
It's like unanticipated opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, Tia, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining the show. What have I not asked you? Anything else you want to add on thoughts around AI and embracing it? And
one thing I always leave people with, a couple of things. AI is great, and it has changed the world, but you have to use it responsibly. Especially with generative AI. The last thing we want is the perfect image of someone to be used in an ad. And now young kids, however they identify gender-wise, walk away thinking that is perfection and that is the goal when that's not even reality. So we have to disclose that things are generative AI produced. We have to use this responsibly. So we have to understand equity and fairness, the data that's used to produce this stuff. Does it represent all? Do you have access? Do you have the rights to use the data? Are you preserving and governing it and using it as prescribed or as you should? In addition, are you, to your point about STEM or STEAM, because I think arts is a big piece of that, are you going back to grade school age kids and showing them that there's a possibility and to stick in these fields, again, not to go necessarily deep, but adjacent to, so that they can have opportunities so that the people designing and building these things are diverse and representative of Earth, so that we combat all the bias. And so that's the last thing I would share, like influence, lead, invest, use power, and do it in a responsible way.
I love it. Well, Tia, thank you again for joining the show. I've learned so much this morning, and we look forward to seeing your career path as you keep taking that hill.
Thank you so much for having me, Toph.
This episode was brought to you by Rally, the Global Cross-Sector Innovation Conference. Learn more at rallyinnovation.com.